Hello everyone, I'm Taka Awori, founder and CEO of Busara Africa, a Pan-African leadership development firm. Welcome to the Leadership in Africa Redefined podcast. This podcast seeks to do two things. One, change the narrative of leadership in Africa, and two, provide concrete strategies and tips for leading in an African context. We do this by interviewing amazing African leaders so that the narrative of leadership in Africa is defined by the best of us, not the worst of us. We share their stories and provide practical suggestions for dealing with the challenges of leading on this continent. We discuss, interrogate, and examine concrete leadership practices that work. We also look at failures that these leaders faced and how they navigated their ways back on track. It's an exciting and empowering space for leaders to thrive and engage. Subscribe to the show to become the leader you have always wanted to be. And if you like the show, be sure you rate it and review it. It helps others to find it. Thanks so much. So hello, and welcome to another episode of Leadership in Africa Redefined. So today I'm really excited to be in conversation with yet another of one of Africa's inspiring leaders and a woman I have admired for many years since I met her. Today I have with me Monica Musonda, who is the CEO and founder of Java Foods, a food processing company based in Zambia that she established to provide affordable nutrition to the Southern African market. And what it seeks to do is also revolutionize the eating habits of the youth by offering them affordable and nutritious food options made from local products. So not all that constant importation, but local products. So you can see why I'm so excited to speak to Monica. She's doing innovative things in her market, and she's definitely one of the few Zambian women involved in manufacturing and agro-processing. So Monica, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. And thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this great series and sharing my story with everybody.
Wonderful. So I think that's a good place to start, actually, Monica, with your story. Tell us what led you to Java Foods and the idea behind Java Foods. Give us your leadership story.
So really interesting. So I'm a lawyer by training, and I loved being a lawyer. So I actually worked as a lawyer for many years. I was like 16, 17 years, and was very fortunate to actually work in a number of countries and for a number of really big corporates. And then at some point, I just realized that I was tired and I was less interested in what I was doing, and I wanted to come home. So I was very fortunate to actually have worked across the world for many different businesses, but I wasn't working in my home country of Zambia, where I'm from. And I had not worked in Zambia for many, many years. I mean, this is like 13 years. I had actually not worked in Zambia. Wow. And I just thought at the time it was time to go home, but also didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be here. I wanted to be part of something that was happening. As many of our countries, it's like a cycle of growth and development, waves of things which are happening. And something was happening in Zambia in the early 2011, 2012, 2013, off the back of really great growth. And we were seeing many Zambians now being much more involved in growing Zambia. And I was like, why am I outside? Let me go home after so many years. But I wanted to be home. I wanted to belong as well. But I also didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I knew I didn't want to continue being a corporate lawyer, and I wanted to do something different. And that's when I really challenged myself to think out of the box, to look around me, open my eyes and see where I could make an impact here in Zambia, where fundamentally I could see where you could plug in, but also grow. And also my last job was in Nigeria, where Nigerians teach you that people are not smarter than you. So, you can do things too. And I remember that all the time and thinking, well, even if I didn't know it, I would learn it. And which is how Java Foods came about. And it was really about looking around me and seeing that Zambia grew food very well. So maize, soybean, wheat, peanuts, a lot of things. We didn't process it. So all the packaged foods we saw on shelves were coming from somewhere else. So although we were growing the food, we weren't making them into packaged products that we could have. And also the second thing, there weren't very many Zambian brands. So we had a lot of South African brands that people talked about. And I was really curious why there were no Zambian food brands. And that's where the challenge came from, was really the mission for Java was to use as much as possible locally sourced raw materials to create food for us, which meant it was targeted at us. At our pocket, at our taste profile, we're in supermarkets for us. Whereas, and I say this carefully because a lot of times with imports, they're really targeted at a much more expatriate community. So the flavor profiles, the pricing is really not for all of us. And I was like, no, I mean, I want my consumer to be a Zambian consumer. And I know my Zambian consumer. And that was where the story began, and not an easy story because everything new is hard. And also I didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the contacts. I was a lawyer for many years. So just kind of crash landed in this thing, and it was really crash landing. And then at some point, I guess it begins to grow after many years of struggles. And then you know that you're not crazy and that actually there is a business behind these great ideas. And it grows into something where people are willing to join your crazy idea and create a business. And that was the story for Java. And now it's 10 years old, believe it or not. Yeah.
Wow. And that was in fact the question I was just about to ask you, 10 years old. But thank you so much, Monica, for sharing your story, because just within your story, I think there's so many lessons for listeners about what it takes to lead on this continent, and the kinds of qualities that African leaders or African leadership, or the kind of qualities Africa needs of its leaders.
Yes.
There's something you said about, I wonder, I relate to your story about wanting to come home and make that difference, because I think this is the thing that we're seeing in many African leaders. They want to have an impact. It's not just about the position. It's about wanting to have an impact, make a difference. That's something I heard from you. The second thing you said is something I often talk about, is this growth mindset. You said, I didn't know it, but I was willing to learn. So it's recognizing that leadership isn't that you know the thing down packed and you step into something you've always known. But here you are shifting. How many years? You said you were a lawyer, 13 or 18? How many years?
So about 16. I practiced for 16 years. So coming from what you know 100% and what you're good at, by the way, to zero, even minus, actually.
So even that tells me something more about you. It's the humility to go from being an expert to be saying, I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to start. This is manufacturing, this is business, this is entrepreneurship, this is all new. So that to me is another quality you've shown that's so required, which ties to something else, courage. Because, again, you were saying you were stepping out into the unknown. And I've seen so many people who are not brave enough to do that. They'll always stay within their comfort zone. So you had the courage to do that, but also you had the vision, because you were able to see the opportunity. You were saying, and I love the way you kept talking about, because this is another thing I say, the celebration of us. You were quite almost the way when you talk about your Zambian consumers, your clients, your market, there's almost a celebration of that. You're like, this is the group I want to serve, which I absolutely
Totally.
I'm willing to take the risk, tenacity. When you said 10 years, that really, so just from your story, I think there's many lessons again about the kind of leadership attributes that this continent needs. But as you said, I know it hasn't been easy the whole time. So what are some of the kinds of challenges you face And how have you overcome them? In other words, what keeps you up at night? And how do you deal with those things that keep you up at night?
And your question is great, and it's both on a personal as well as on a business level, because challenges were both. I can tell you on a personal level, I'm in the real self-doubt. The question is, can I really do this? Should I be doing it? Why should I do it? Are you really here to save the world? I mean, should you? And many a times, particularly when it wasn't going well, where you you run out of money, and actually maybe you shouldn't be doing. So there was a lot of times I doubted myself and my capacity to continue to do this successfully, particularly when you look around you and you see so many successes, particularly I say this as a woman. You see, and I'm a soul. There are very few women in processing, in manufacturing in Zambia. So there's no one I can share it with. So when you look around you and all the men are doing great, but no one is telling you the secrets of how to do it. And they're like, what? Why are you here anyway? So I think on a personal level, that was very difficult for me. And really transitioning towards creating a balance for my life. I began the business sort of my twilight of my 30s, and when you really should be, thinking about personally your family, about making very different decisions for your life. Should you maybe making some hard decisions then about starting a business, right? And so that was also on a personal level very difficult, and starting new relationships. I hadn't lived in Zambia, and I hadn't had any business relationships. So, again, why should you do this when you have no relationships, no knowledge, right? So that was also on a personal level very difficult. On a business level, really, I mean, we produce an instant noodle, which is now the market leader in Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. But when we started, everyone was like, no one's going to eat that. I mean, that's not food we eat. I mean, why would you do it? And there was a lot of naysayers, and also I couldn't even get it on supermarket shelves. So the real, just they say really showing that it was a business that would grow was very difficult in the first few years, because we had to convince people that it was food for them, that they could eat it, it was affordable, it was something for them. So it was really difficult for us in the first years to grow the business and also to finance the business. I was fortunate because I had some savings, but at some point the savings ran out, and I had to convince a bank manager to give me an overdraft. And they only give overdrafts in many African countries if you've got security, if you've got a guarantee. And it was really expensive. So just growing the business financially, even getting the right team to support me grow. And it took many years. I mean, you have to convince others to believe your vision and the crazy ideas. And it took time. So many times it was very difficult, as I said, on a personal as well as on a professional basis. And many times I thought, is it really worth it? And I think now, after 10 years, so much has changed, right? There's many times, and I know we've talked about this as well, as sometimes being congratulating yourselves on every small step that you don't, we're always waiting, and maybe it was my nature. You're waiting for the big thing, and you're always saying you're not celebrating the win, even if it's a small win. And I think I'm learning to do that, right? And it really did put a lot of pressure on me because,
I'm here.
Mike, are you there? Okay,
I'm
great.
Here. Yes.
Because it used to put a lot of pressure on me because I was waiting for this big thing, and I wasn't celebrating that actually we did the first sale, or we bought our first truck, or I have employees now. I have 10 employees, 20 employees, 30 employees, and I needed to celebrate those steps much more. But it's been a learning, right? I'm grateful for the experience, and I hope that I can, like what we're doing today, share the stories, and women can step out and do more. Right.
Yes.
Hi, folks. Hope you're enjoying the show. So have you heard about the Africa Leaders Circle, our impactful e-learning platform that enables you to grow into the leader you would want to follow? Here is a message to tell you what you need to know.
Are you a CEO, executive director, or HR manager that is looking to build a pipeline of leaders that are ready to step up into management roles? Are you looking for a self-paced learning platform that provides your leaders with quality content and does not take them away from their work for too long? Are you looking for a program that enables your managers to move from knowledge acquisition to demonstrable improved practice? Then look no further. Sign them up for the African Leaders Circle today. The African Leaders Circle is an e-learning platform that gives your managers access to an exclusive community of leaders across the continent and a wide range of strategies and tools to stand out. We do this through online courses, discussion forums, a library of resources, and a personal learning advisor to support each of your managers to maximize their learning on the platform. To learn more, visit our website www.busara-africa.com.
Don't forget to visit our website busara-africa.com to learn more. And now back to the show.
And it's so interesting listening to those challenges. I'm sure there is not one woman in business who cannot relate. Yes. That sense of the self-doubt, the loneliness, how you're managing the balance, how you have those right networking relationships. You know, the guys are in the, the bars or on the golf course, striking those relationships. Yes. And we're questioning, well, do I have the right relationships? They went to school together, they're paddies, all of that. And in terms of a business sense, that those naysayers, those constant naysayers, accessing to financing, the right funding, the having the right team on board, I am sure so many women in business can relate. You've started to allude to some of the things you did to address that, like celebrating the small wins, not waiting for the big wins, that sense of gratitude as well. What are some of the other things you did to overcome these challenges?
I got a coach. I did, to help unpack my head, which had lots of little things or lots of big things actually, and I couldn't clearly see things, and clearly couldn't give myself a break, and so it was really helpful. Thank you, Taka. So I think that was helpful. And I would encourage people to do that. I mean, whether it's a professional coach or someone you can speak to who's a mentor or a sponsor, to continue to support you as you go through the many, many different cycles of business. So I think that was really important for me on a personal level. And also what I did was I stepped out of so it is really consuming. Running your own business, really consuming. But I realized that I wasn't going to learn unless I stepped out sometimes of the usual. So I took on board positions of businesses which were really exceptional businesses in different sectors, and really tried to learn from them. So I learned a lot about financial management from some of the businesses who are exceptional at financial management, about how they treat debtors, how they sell. Things I wouldn't be able to learn because obviously you're not taught, but you see best practice from really exceptional businesses. And I'm very fortunate that I was invited to sit on the boards of some really great companies. And I'm like a sponge, and I ask questions because I'm really trying to relate it back to what we do. And that has been very, very helpful, and if I wasn't lucky to sit on a board, I think I would have tracked down a few MDs and said, but how did you do this? I mean, simple things. How did they manage during COVID? I mean, it's a really simple question, but how did you treat your employees? Did you do this? Did you do that? It was really interesting to see how big companies switched and became more empathetic towards their employees because they knew that they could not succeed without their employees. And it's something which taught that simple thing. It taught me that, okay, Monica, right now, the most important thing are your team. How can we make this as painless as possible to get through this pandemic? And I learned a lot. So that was also really helpful. The continuous process of learning, I can say that is one of the things, whether it was sitting on a board, whether it was doing a small course, whether it was sharing through a professional coach. And I think, again, on the professional coach level also made me relook on a personal level, how to, as much as possible, try to balance things. I mean, it's still a big issue about that.
Work in progress.
No, it's work in progress, but gratitude, every day, yeah, it doesn't work out well, but I'm thankful for many, many things which have worked out, right? So yeah.
Nice, nice. So this thing, it's interesting. In the book, I have a chapter on continuous learning, because I realize indeed that if you're a leader and you've stopped learning, what you have to offer, almost ceases. So I'm hearing from you that having a coach, being able to sit on these other boards was spaces for learning, and that is what enabled you to constantly grow and be able to respond to whatever was arising.
Totally.
Yeah?
Totally.
If I had to ask you about what is some of the, people often talk about women leaders, or women not supporting each other as much. I always tell people that's a myth. I often find women do support each other as much. But in terms of the networks that have helped you to strengthen your leadership, how has that been for you in terms of other women leaders and networks, or business leaders? Or what has been your experience?
So first of all, I've had to be very deliberate about it. It doesn't happen by osmosis, because just because you are a business leader, that you then fit yourself into a network of business leaders. It's really been about being deliberate about which networks I want to be involved in and why. Whether it is an African focused think tank, which focuses on things like food security, manufacturing, supporting entrepreneurs gain financing, things like that. So I've been very deliberate, and the networks are really quite vast. And from simple things around entrepreneurship to more difficult things about nutrition, for instance. And I did that deliberately because we really wanted to, in our own business, really focus on nutrition and be seeing how we could bring the nutritional aspect into the business. But I knew I needed support. I needed to put myself in an environment where people could help me achieve that. So we joined a number of networks which focused on nutrition interventions from private sector, and really trying to narrow the gap of knowledge. So I was deliberate about it, but also you have to kind of have clarity, again, on a personal and on a business basis, what you're going to gain. Because there are definitely some networks which are there to just waste your time and not achieve, right?
Yes.
Definitely they're definitely there. But also, even on a personal level, I mean, I definitely want to leave a legacy here in Zambia and on the continent about some of the work I've done. But so I've had to also be very deliberate about where I profile myself, what I choose to participate in as a speaker, as a participant, all those sorts of things. But it's also been very deliberate because what I want to achieve for myself personally, after all is said and done, we should be able to turn around and say, Monica, this is what I did, kind of thing. And so that for me is also really important. Yeah.
Interesting. I always, some of the key words I'm hearing from that is the intentionality and the deliberateness with which you have approached the whole area of networking. Being very clear, because again, I hear so many, I want to network, but I'm like, what I'm hearing from you is be very clear about who, for what purpose, select carefully around that.
Exactly. Otherwise, you spend half the time chasing because you think that person's a name, but it's really not helping you achieve what you want to achieve. Maybe they're achieving what they want to achieve, but what is it that you need from this network of people? Is it access to information, access to areas of financing, access to a market, access to product innovation, or just really good learning opportunities from others? What is it that you need this network for, right?
Yes. Okay. There's a question I'm going to ask you that's sometimes a bit tricky. But I think because you're a thoughtful person, I know you will reframe it. I have found that the best leaders learn more from their, I don't want to use this strong word, failures, than sometimes even their successes. Now, when you look back on your journey, what have been some of the biggest dips or challenges that have really taught you about what it means to show up as such an impactful leader that you are?
So it's so interesting, and I agree with the statement, because I think, and I said from the beginning, it's been very hard for me to realize or to see my successes, because I was one of those persons who was looking for the big success, right? So that's been, but definitely the failures have taught me resilience. I've had many. I have had many throughout the cycle. Continue to have many simple things that still, after 10 years, people don't believe in the story, right? Still will not support you, etc. You know, I mean, you still have those blocks, right? But what I've learned is that, one, not everyone is going to believe your story or your jam or whatever it is. So not everyone's going to get there, right? But definitely you have to believe in what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve, but also be pragmatic to adjust. Because sometimes they're probably right. Maybe it isn't a business that you're doing, or you're doing something wrong, but you must be pragmatic, flexible enough to make those changes. And I think it's not the failure of the whole idea, but maybe a portion of the idea. And I know that is what I've learned, because I definitely wouldn't be here if I took the whole business was failed, because we failed many times. Yeah. And it wasn't that it was the business that was a failure, or the idea or the concept around it. It was what we were doing at that time, which we were probably not executing well, which was not working, and it just needed to change, right? So I think that's taught me a lot. That has definitely taught me a lot.
Powerful. You know why I love that so much is because of late I've been teaching a lot about leadership agility. And when folks say, well, unpack that, Taka, it's just what you captured. It's like, it's holding your vision. And you know, you're so good at articulating your vision. I hear this vision of having Java foods that responding to a Zambian market, sourcing local, local inputs, and really speaking to Zambians and offering. That's your vision. But what I'm hearing you say is you've the path to the vision, you have been able to pivot and adjust. If you being realistic to say, actually, you know, this route is not going to get us there, we need to pivot. It doesn't mean we drop the vision, but we hold it, how do we say, the path to it. We're willing to be pragmatic and adapt. To me, that is the agility. Amazing.
Totally. Yeah. And it takes some time to appreciate that. And definitely for other entrepreneurs, I think it's really important. It doesn't mean you abandon everything, unless, of course, it's really, really bad. But I think it requires you to have different lenses on, different time, because sometimes things just take time and you just have to go through it. But it's a great idea, but maybe it's too early, right? Or it just needed something different, or a different story being told about it. So I think really, really important to definitely be agile, to be pragmatic and
flexible. Nice. All right. So my final question for you, you know, I could talk to you all day, but let me hold myself. My final question to you is, imagine one of our listeners is a young man or woman who is thinking about starting a business, or has already embarked upon a business and is thinking, I'm not sure. What are maybe one or two key pieces of advice you would give them that you have not already mentioned? Because already so much you've given them. I think you've given them lots of advice. Anything you haven't said that you think would be great advice to them?
Don't overthink it, actually.
I love it.
No, because, you know, I can give a perfect example of myself having, you know, you're a bit too educated, and then you want to do the business plan, and it must balance and it must show growth, and you spend 8 months working with an analyst on a business plan. And you know what? You're just wasting time, because everything in that business plan probably not correct, because you don't understand the market or understand what people are willing to pay for. I often say, definitely think about the idea, of work out, but also allow yourself to start and to be taught by the environment, because the environment will teach you that actually you don't get paid in 30 days, you get paid in 60, or the environment will teach you that your price is too expensive. So that number you had in the model, even if you put in there 10 times, does not work, because no one is willing to pay for that at that price, right? So I think be definitely open-minded to obviously doing your research, but open-minded to starting. I think lots of we get that inertia to really jump into it. Start and allow yourself to be taught.
You build the plane as you fly, as many say.
Absolutely. And that's entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurship is never safe and never perfect. So don't build the whole plane, because actually it might never fly because it's too heavy, right? So do definitely, as you say, you build it as you go on, So I definitely agree about that. And another thing is, I think definitely start small. Have one paying client to pay all your expenses if you can, before you now start getting the fancy offers and the nice cars. But just ensure you understand how your business model works, whether you're selling a service, a product, whatever it is, understand it enough before you start spending, but also just make sure you have that one paying client that can get you through the rough patches.
I love it. Monica, you are amazing. Thank you so much for these gems you have sprinkled. I'm sure we're going to have you on again, because I think from the perspective of, and I think what you've offered is really perspectives of leadership, not just in business, but generally in terms of what are those qualities and attributes that are required to thrive, succeed, and have an impact on this continent. So thank you for being you. Thank you for the difference that you're making, and thank you for joining Leadership in Africa Redefined.
Thank you for having me. I am really honored for the time.
Hello, wonderful leader. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the podcast. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. If you want more of the lessons, experiences, and nuggets for effective leadership, join our amazing platform for leaders, the African Leaders Circle. Learn more at www.busara-africa.com. And if you liked the show, don't forget to subscribe and share with other amazing leaders. See you soon. Ciao.